The automatic doors of Whole Foods whispered open, releasing a breath of cool air into Miami's heavy afternoon heat. Victoria Sterling entered like she owned the place, which, given her net worth, she nearly did. Her Hermes heels clicked against the polished floor, platinum hair sculpted into a flawless chignon, white Chanel blazer sharp enough to cut glass. Every item she touched, from imported olive oil to artisan cheeses, wasn't food so much as a declaration of who she was. Shopping was another stage on which to perform wealth. A few aisles behind her, Maria Santos pushed a squeaky cart with her 8-year-old daughter Sophia. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. Maria's blue scrubs were faded from countless washes, her ponytail held by an elastic that had lost its stretch. She'd rushed here straight from a hospital shift and would soon head to her evening cleaning job. Groceries had to be squeezed between work and work. Every item was weighed, not in ounces but in cost. Rice, beans, chicken on sale, meals planned to stretch across the week. Sophia padded along, wise beyond her years, her small hand brushing her mother's arm. She already knew what not today meant when she asked for cookies. Later. Maybe next time. When life allowed it. Their paths crossed at the deli counter. Victoria drummed manicured nails, sighing at the slow service. Maria quietly requested a quarter-pound of turkey on special. They didn't speak, didn't acknowledge each other. Parallel worlds, destined to collide. The checkout lines were clogged, customers restless. Victoria fumed, typing furiously on her iPhone, checking her Rolex, sighing loud enough for everyone to hear. 3 customers ahead, Maria prayed her total would match her careful calculations. Sophia entertained herself by counting items in English and Spanish. When Maria's turn came, Jessica, the young cashier with multiple piercings but a warm smile, brightened. She always liked seeing Maria and her polite little girl. Their exchange was simple but human, compliments on earrings, a genuine laugh, a shared moment of dignity. Victoria, watching, tapped her foot with disdain. The scanner beeped. Rice, beans, chicken, vegetables. $42.50. Maria slid her EBT card in, breath held. The screen flickered, declined. Her heart sank. She tried again, declined. Sophia moved closer, sensing her mother's tension. Maria pulled out her phone. The deposit hadn't come through. Maybe Monday. But Monday was too late. I'm sorry, she whispered, reaching for her debit card, knowing it held too little. Maybe she could put items back. She'd done it before. Behind her, Victoria's patience snapped. Oh, for crying out loud. Are you serious? She barked, loud enough to hush the crowd. Heads turned. Maria's face burned. Some of us have important places to be. Jessica shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, customer service might help. But Victoria wasn't looking for solutions. Maybe shop somewhere that fits your budget. Whole Foods isn't the bargain bin. The word welfare dripped from her tongue like poison. Maria stood frozen, humiliation crushing her. Sophia, small hand gripping her mother's arm, had been watching. And then, something inside her broke. She stepped forward, voice tiny but clear, "Excuse me, lady." The store fell silent. Victoria blinked, surprised a child dared interrupt. Sophia's voice grew stronger, "My mom works harder than anyone. She cleans offices at night so kids like me can eat. She takes care of sick people at the hospital. What do you do besides be mean to people who can't fight back?" The air froze. Victoria's face went crimson, then pale. Customers began murmuring. "The kid's right," one man said. A woman with a toddler added, "She has more class than most adults." Phones rose, recording. Maria's eyes brimmed with tears, pride and fear colliding. Victoria sputtered, "How dare you, where are your manners?" But Sophia's answer cut sharper than any adult's rebuke. Respect is for people who deserve it. Having money doesn't make you better. Being mean isn't respect. It's just bullying. The word bullying echoed like a bell. Suddenly, Everyone saw it clearly, not a frustrated shopper, but a wealthy woman humiliating the vulnerable. Offers came instantly. "I'll cover their groceries," said one man. "So will I," said another. Within moments, 5 people stepped forward. Maria wept, thanking strangers through trembling lips. Sophia wrapped her arms around her mother, finally just a child again. Victoria stood exposed, her cruelty turning her into the villain of a story unfolding live. She backed away, dignity crumbling. But before she could escape, Sophia called out, "Wait." The girl extended her hand. "I hope you have a better day. Maybe tomorrow, try being nice instead of mean. It feels better." Victoria stared, mask slipping. For a moment, the whole store saw the small, insecure woman beneath all the wealth. She turned and fled, leaving her cart behind. The video clips spread online before Maria and Sophia even reached their car. The storm was only beginning. By dawn the next morning, Victoria Sterling's empire of control was already cracking. She awoke in her $3.2 million Coral Gables mansion to the relentless buzz of her phone. Dozens of missed calls. Hundreds of messages. A flood of notifications. At first, she assumed it was business, a problem with one of her real estate projects. She couldn't have been more wrong. The first video, shaky but clear, had been posted by Jennifer Matthews, a mother of 3 who had been in the store that Saturday. Her caption was simple: "This little girl is braver than most adults I know. Watch her put a bully in her place." By sunrise, Jennifer's clip had been shared more than 50,000 times. 3 other angles soon followed: customers with cell phones, and even security footage from the store. Each showed the same undeniable truth: a wealthy woman mocking a struggling mother, and an 8-year-old dismantling her with honesty and courage. By Sunday afternoon, Victoria's name was trending nationwide. Hashtags piled up: hashtag Victoria Sterling bully, hashtag Sophia the hero, hashtag Whole Foods shame. On Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, the story spread like fire. Millions watched Sophia's tiny voice pierce arrogance, and millions more joined the chorus of condemnation. The comments were merciless. "This woman is everything wrong with privilege. An 8-year-old showed more dignity than she's ever had. Imagine giving a speech at a charity luncheon about helping families, after humiliating one in public." Victoria's hands trembled as she scrolled. Her carefully cultivated image of elegance, of being admired and envied, had collapsed in hours. Now, strangers spat her name like a curse. Across town, Maria Santos faced a different kind of storm. Her small apartment overflowed with messages of love and support. The same videos that destroyed Victoria's reputation made Maria and Sophia symbols of courage. Strangers offered donations, scholarships, even job opportunities. Maria felt overwhelmed, grateful, but wary of being turned into a spectacle. Sophia seemed almost untouched by the sudden fame. When Maria showed her the video, the child tilted her head thoughtfully. "Did I do the right thing, Mommy?" she asked. "You stood up for someone who needed help," Maria whispered, stroking her daughter's hair. "That is always the right thing." Even national talk shows wanted them on. Parenting blogs praised Maria for raising a daughter with such moral clarity. Advocacy groups quoted Sophia's words as proof that children can change the world. Meanwhile, Victoria's perfect life unraveled. Her real estate company's phone lines lit up with angry calls. Longtime clients threatened to walk. The charity board where she served as treasurer met without her to discuss removal. Even her country club suggested she take a temporary leave. The worst came from inside her own family. Her daughter Ashley, a pediatric nurse in New York, called with trembling anger. "Mom, I've seen the video. I can't defend you. That little girl showed more maturity than you did." "You don't understand," Victoria insisted. "I was late, stressed." "No excuse," Ashley cut her off. "I work with families like that every day. You mocked a woman doing her best." Her son Marcus was equally blunt. "My kids' friends call you the bully lady. Do you realize what you've done to our name?" For once in her life, Victoria had no retort. By Thursday, with the outrage only intensifying, she hired a crisis management team. Their advice was shocking: no spin, no excuses. Take full responsibility. The public can smell dishonesty, the strategist told her. If you want any chance of redemption, you must own every word you said, and change. For a woman who had never apologized for anything, it felt unbearable. But by Friday, with her reputation in ruins, she had no choice. Victoria sat before her phone camera, stripped of her designer armor. A plain white blouse, her hair in a ponytail, her voice trembling. "My name is Victoria Sterling," she began. "Most of you know me from a video that shames me to my core. I mocked a mother who was struggling. I used my privilege to humiliate instead of help. And when her 8-year-old daughter defended her, I became the bully." She paused, fighting tears. "I want to say I'm sorry, to Maria, to Sophia, and to everyone who watched me be cruel. That little girl had more courage than I did. From today forward, I will use my resources to support families like theirs. I've already made donations to local food banks, and I've asked to meet Maria and Sophia in person to apologize face to face." The video spread as fast as the first, but reactions were divided. Some praised her honesty. Others called it damage control. But one response mattered most: Maria's. That evening, she recorded her own message, Sophia at her side. "We've received Mrs. Sterling's apology," Maria said gently. "And we accept it. Forgiveness matters." Sophia leaned forward. "Everyone makes mistakes. What's important is what you do after." Their grace stunned the public. The bullied had forgiven the bully, and the 8-year-old who had silenced a grocery store now extended her hand to the world. Victoria Sterling had spent her entire life defining success in numbers, net worth, square footage, social invitations. But nothing in her portfolio had prepared her for being known as the woman who bullied a mother at Whole Foods. For the first time, she was powerless. Every attempt to return to normal life was met with stares, whispers, even outright confrontation. At first, she tried hiding in her mansion, convinced the outrage would fade. But it didn't. Each week brought new think pieces, talk show segments, and parenting blogs dissecting her cruelty. Business magazines used her as a case study in how quickly a brand could collapse. The irony cut deep: she'd been rushing that day to a charity luncheon about helping families in need. Now she was the nation's symbol of hypocrisy. Maria and Sophia, meanwhile, were overwhelmed in a very different way. Donations poured in, strangers mailed gift cards, and a scholarship fund for Sophia reached thousands within days. News anchors praised Maria's dignity under fire. Sophia's face became an emblem of childhood courage. Maria often felt uncomfortable with the attention, but she couldn't deny that their lives had been softened by the kindness of strangers. Yet, in her quiet moments, Maria thought about Victoria. She remembered the woman's flushed face when Sophia spoke, the split-second vulnerability before she fled. Maria knew humiliation could either harden a person or break them open to change. Which path would Victoria choose? For weeks, Victoria wrestled with that question herself. The apology video had slowed the backlash but hadn't healed the wound. Strangers still hurled insults online. Her name remained shorthand for entitlement. She realized money couldn't buy back dignity. Only action could. So she did something unthinkable for a woman of her stature: she showed up at the local food bank she had donated to after her apology. Not with cameras, not with a speech, but with rolled-up sleeves. At first, no one believed she was serious. Volunteers eyed her like an intruder, waiting for her to pose for a photo and leave. But she kept coming back. Every Tuesday and Friday, she sorted cans, stacked boxes, and carried heavy bags to cars. She listened to stories from people she had once dismissed as others. An elderly man who had lost his pension. A single father juggling 2 jobs. A veteran battling health issues. For the first time in decades, Victoria wasn't the center of attention. She was simply another set of hands. and slowly, something shifted inside her. She thought often of Sophia's question, "What do you do besides be mean to people who can't fight back?" At the food bank, she began to find her answer. 3 months after the incident, Maria received an unexpected call. It was Victoria. Her voice was tentative, almost shy. "Maria, I wondered if I might join you and Sophia for dinner one evening. Not as publicity. Just to know you better." Maria hesitated. Old wounds ached. But her heart, shaped by years of struggle and faith, leaned toward grace. "All right," she said softly. "Come as you are." That Friday, Victoria entered their modest apartment with trembling hands. She brought no expensive gifts, no airs of superiority. Maria had prepared spaghetti and meatballs, garlic bread, and a simple salad grown from balcony pots. Victoria had eaten in Michelin-starred restaurants across the world, but never had a meal humbled her like this. Sophia, brimming with natural warmth, treated her like any guest. "Mrs. Victoria, do you want to see my room?" she chirped after dinner. Victoria followed her down the hallway into a tiny bedroom painted with imagination. Handmade drawings lined the walls, library books filled wooden crate shelves. Sophia pointed to a picture of herself teaching in front of a chalkboard. "I want to be a teacher. Or maybe a doctor. Or maybe someone who helps people get food." Victoria's throat tightened. "You can be anything you want, Sophia," she whispered. "I know," Sophia said matter-of-factly. "Because my mom says if you work hard and help people, you can do anything." When Victoria left that night, Maria walked her to the door. "Thank you for coming," Maria said. "No," Victoria replied, her eyes moist. "Thank you for having me. I don't deserve your kindness." Maria gave a tired but genuine smile. "Everyone deserves kindness. That's what I teach Sophia. Everyone deserves dignity." Driving home, Victoria replayed those words. For years, she had mistaken dignity for prestige, houses, clothes, a last name in glossy magazines. But here, in a cramped apartment over spaghetti, she had learned the truth: dignity wasn't something you bought. It was something you gave. From then on, her transformation deepened. She continued volunteering, eventually joining the food bank's board. She redirected a portion of her wealth into scholarships for children like Sophia. She hosted business seminars where the entry fee was donations for struggling families. But more importantly, she changed in small, unseen ways. She greeted cashiers by name. She tipped generously without expectation. She waited patiently in lines, remembering the girl who had once silenced her with truth. The woman who had once believed money made her untouchable now understood that compassion was the only true measure of worth. Months passed, but the memory of that Saturday afternoon in Whole Foods refused to fade. The viral video still circulated on social media, replayed as both warning and inspiration. Teachers used it in classrooms to discuss empathy. Business leaders referenced it in seminars about ethics. Parenting blogs praised Sophia as proof that courage isn't bound by age. For Maria, life shifted in subtle yet profound ways. The donations that had poured in gave her breathing room. Bills could be paid without the constant knot of fear in her stomach. She no longer had to juggle 2 jobs every week. The extra time meant she could be home to help Sophia with homework or tuck her into bed. Though she never sought fame, Maria quietly gave thanks for the strangers who had turned a moment of humiliation into a lifeline. Sophia adjusted as only children can. Sometimes classmates whispered, pointing at her as the girl from the video. At first, she felt self-conscious. But then she'd remember what her mother always said: dignity is never about what people call you, but how you treat them in return. She continued to stand up for kids on the playground, helped her teacher with younger students, and carried herself with the same moral clarity that had silenced the grocery store. Victoria Sterling, once the villain of the story, lived her own transformation in the shadows. She was no longer invited to charity galas or society lunches. Her name had vanished from glossy magazines. But she didn't miss it as much as she thought she would. The quiet of stacking boxes at the food bank or sitting with families over shared meals filled her with something money never had: peace. The biggest change came in her relationship with Maria and Sophia. What began as one awkward dinner evolved into something closer to family. Victoria visited their apartment often, sometimes bringing bags of fresh vegetables from the food bank, other times just sitting at the table listening to Sophia's endless stories. She didn't come as a benefactor, but as a guest learning humility. One evening, nearly a year after the confrontation, Sophia handed Victoria a handmade card. In colorful, uneven handwriting, it read, "Thank you for learning how to be nice." Victoria kept it on her desk at the food bank, where she now spent much of her time. Whenever doubt crept in, whenever she wondered if her change was real, she looked at those words and reminded herself redemption was a choice renewed every day. Her wealth had once built walls, insulating her from people she believed beneath her. Now, she used it to open doors. She funded scholarships for children from low-income families. She invested in community programs that provided meals for seniors and veterans. She donated to hospitals where Maria once worked double shifts. With each act, she chipped away at the old version of herself, the woman whose power came from belittling others. But the real legacy wasn't money. It was the friendship that had grown from the ashes of humiliation. At Sophia's 9th birthday, Victoria sat at the small kitchen table surrounded by balloons and homemade cake. She laughed freely, no longer worried about appearances. When it came time for Sophia to blow out the candles, the little girl closed her eyes, hands folded in prayer. Later, when Maria asked what she wished for, Sophia answered with the innocence that had once disarmed a grocery store bully, that people keep remembering to be kind, even when they don't have to be. Years later, the moment still rippled outward. Sophia, now older, was invited to conferences in schools to speak about advocacy. Her speech was simple but unforgettable: "I didn't plan to be brave that day. I just couldn't stay quiet." Sometimes all it takes is one voice, even a small one, to change the room. The audience always erupted in applause, not because of the eloquence, but because the truth was undeniable. Victoria often sat quietly in the back of those talks, tears in her eyes. She knew she would never escape the label of what she once was. But she also knew her life had been reshaped by an 8-year-old who refused to stay silent. Sophia had given her a second chance, not just at reputation, but at humanity. Maria, proud but grounded, reminded them both of the deeper lesson. "Strength isn't measured in what you own," she would say softly, "but in the courage to choose kindness when cruelty is easier." The story that had begun with humiliation in a checkout line had become something no one could have predicted: a lesson in forgiveness, a testament to the power of a child's voice, and a reminder that redemption is always possible when truth breaks through pride. And so, the viral video that once threatened to destroy lives ended up weaving 3 of them together forever: a struggling mother, her brave daughter, and a wealthy woman who learned that dignity is not bought but given. The storm that began in a grocery store never truly passed, it evolved. Months after the incident, Sophia's voice was still echoing far beyond Miami. Teachers played the clip in classrooms when discussing bullying. Churches used it in sermons about humility. Even corporations referenced it in training sessions about respect and customer service. What had started as one child's defense of her mother had become a moral compass for thousands. Maria tried to shield her daughter from the constant attention. At home, she wanted life to remain ordinary: school, homework, bedtime stories. But ordinary had become impossible. Letters arrived daily, some from strangers thanking Sophia for giving them courage to stand up to bullies, others from children confessing they wished they had her bravery. One evening, as Maria sorted through a pile of envelopes at the kitchen table, Sophia sat beside her, chin propped on her hands. "Mommy, why do people write to me like I'm famous?" Maria smiled gently. "Because you said the words they needed to hear but didn't know how to say." Sometimes, one brave voice speaks for many. Sophia thought about that for a long time. "But I was just telling the truth," she whispered. "And that," Maria replied, kissing her forehead, "is what makes it powerful." Meanwhile, Victoria's transformation deepened. Though she had lost much of her social standing, she had gained something she'd never valued before: purpose. Her days at the food bank were no longer about atonement but about connection. She listened to stories she once would have ignored. A grandmother raising her grandchildren after her daughter's addiction. A single father working 3 jobs to keep his kids in school. Each story carved new empathy into her once cold heart. She began to mentor younger women in business, not to flaunt success but to teach responsibility. Wealth without compassion is poverty of the soul, she would tell them, her voice tinged with the memory of who she used to be. The turning point came when Sophia's school invited Victoria to speak during their annual Kindness Week. At first, Maria hesitated. Was it right to let the woman who once mocked them stand before children as a role model? But Sophia surprised everyone with her answer. Yes, she should come, the girl insisted. Because if she can change, maybe other bullies can too. The auditorium was packed. Parents, students, teachers all waited to hear what Victoria Sterling, the woman whose arrogance had gone viral, would say. She walked onto the stage not in designer heels, but in simple flats, her hair loose around her shoulders. For a moment, she stood frozen, scanning the crowd. Then her eyes found Sophia in the front row, her small hands clasped in encouragement. Victoria's voice trembled at first, but steadied as she spoke. Many of you know me as the woman from that video. You've seen me at my worst. You saw me belittle someone who didn't deserve it. You saw me act like kindness was beneath me. And an 8-year-old taught me the lesson I should have known all along. She paused, breath shaking. That day, I wasn't the powerful one. I was the weakest in the room. Sophia was the strong one, because she chose truth over fear. The audience erupted in applause. For once, Victoria didn't bask in admiration. She bowed her head, humbled, tears streaming freely. Later, Maria told her quietly, this isn't about who you were. It's about who you're becoming. For Sophia, life continued to intertwine with moments she could never have imagined. At 10 years old, she was invited to speak at a community rally for children's rights. Standing on a wooden stage in front of hundreds, she held the microphone with both hands and said, kids can see when something isn't fair. We don't need to be grown-ups to know kindness is better than cruelty. If I could speak up that day, so can you. The crowd roared, parents wiping tears as their children clapped along. Reporters called her the girl with the fearless voice. Sophia didn't understand the fuss. To her, it wasn't fearlessness, it was love. Love for her mother, love for what was right. Victoria often reflected on that truth. In her journal, she wrote, Sophia didn't just save Maria that day. She saved me. She stripped away the mask I'd hidden behind for years. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that gift. The bond between the 3 women grew unbreakable. Holidays were spent together, sometimes in Maria's small apartment, sometimes at Victoria's home, which she had begun to open as a refuge for community dinners. Sophia grew up seeing that even someone who had caused pain could transform into someone who healed it. And yet, the world had not finished testing them. With fame came scrutiny. Online trolls targeted Maria, accusing her of milking sympathy. Some sneered that Sophia's bravery had been rehearsed for attention. Maria shielded her daughter as best she could, but children notice more than adults realize. One night, Sophia crawled into her mother's bed, tears wetting the pillow. Why do people say mean things about us, Mommy? I thought being kind made people like you. Maria held her close, heart aching. Sometimes kindness shines so bright it makes others uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means you're showing them what they haven't found yet. Sophia sniffled. Do I stop talking then? Maria cupped her face. No, Mija. You never stop. Voices like yours are needed most when the world is loud with cruelty. From that night, Sophia grew steadier, more determined. Her words at community events became sharper, wiser than her years. Adults often marveled at her clarity, forgetting she was still just a child who wanted to bake cookies with her mom. Victoria watched with awe. She's teaching us all, she said quietly to Maria one evening. That girl was born with a light I tried to snuff out. And now, she's showing me how to keep it burning. By the time Sophia turned 12, the viral video was still remembered, though no longer the center of daily attention. Yet its shadow remained. Teachers introduced her as the girl who stood up in the grocery store. Neighbors looked at Maria with admiration tinged with pity, as if her dignity had been borrowed from her daughter's courage. For a while, Sophia loved the attention. When asked to speak at schools or rallies, she enjoyed standing on stage, small but commanding. Her voice carried the same clear strength it had that day in Whole Foods. But as middle school crept in, the line between recognition and pressure blurred. Some classmates whispered that she was the charity girl. Others teased her for being too good, mocking her for acting like a preacher. Once, after she spoke at a city youth event, an older student sneered, "So what, you're famous for yelling at a rich lady?" Big deal. The words stung deeper than Sophia admitted. At home, she tried to hide her tears, but Maria always noticed. One evening, while cooking rice and beans, Maria asked gently, "Mija, what's wrong?" Sophia slammed her math book shut. "I don't want to be the grocery store girl anymore. I just want to be me." Maria's heart clenched. She set down the spoon and held her daughter close. "You are you. That day didn't make you, it only showed who you already were." "But what if I don't want to be brave all the time?" Sophia whispered. "What if I'm tired?" Maria kissed her forehead. "Then rest, Mija. Courage doesn't mean never being tired. It means standing up when it matters most. No one expects you to fight every battle." Victoria, who had become part of their lives like an unlikely aunt, also noticed Sophia's struggle. She invited her for a weekend at her house, away from the noise. They baked cookies, planted flowers, and for the first time in months, Sophia laughed without the weight of expectation. Late one night, sitting on Victoria's patio under the stars, Sophia asked the question that startled the older woman. "Do you ever wish the video never happened?" Victoria exhaled, her eyes glistening. "Every day and never at all. It ruined who I thought I was. But it gave me the chance to become who I should be. And it gave me you and your mom. So no, I don't wish it away." Sophia nodded slowly, absorbing the paradox. As years passed, the roles shifted. Maria, once shielded by her daughter's bravery, became Sophia's anchor as adolescence tested her. Sophia wrestled with identity, pressure, and the endless gaze of the internet. Yet through each challenge, Maria reminded her, "Your voice is a gift, not a burden. Use it when you choose, not when others demand it." At 14, Sophia was invited to Washington, D.C., to speak at a youth leadership summit. Maria worried the spotlight might crush her, but Sophia accepted. Standing before hundreds of teenagers, she didn't recite polished speeches. Instead, she told them the truth. "I didn't want to be a hero. I was scared that day. But I saw my mom being hurt, and I couldn't stay quiet. Bravery doesn't mean you aren't afraid. It just means you love something enough to speak anyway." The room erupted, young faces lit with inspiration. For Sophia, the applause didn't feel like pressure, it felt like release. She wasn't just a grocery store girl anymore. She was her own voice, shaping her own path. Victoria watched from the audience, tears streaming. She often wondered how different her life would be if Sophia had stayed silent. Probably richer, more respected in shallow circles, but emptier. Instead, she now measured success in lives touched, in dignity restored. At home, Maria remained grounded. Bills still had to be paid, meals cooked, laundry folded. Yet their lives were no longer shadowed by despair. The kindness of strangers had built stepping stones, but it was their resilience that carried them forward. Still, challenges came. Trolls online resurfaced the old video whenever Sophia spoke, twisting the narrative to mock Maria for playing victim or accuse Victoria of performing charity. Each cruel comment cut deep. But Maria taught Sophia the same lesson she herself had learned: people will always talk. What matters is whether your heart stays true. One night, after reading hateful remarks online, Sophia asked Victoria, "Why do people still hate you, even after you changed?" Victoria's voice was steady but sad. "Because some people need villains more than they need truth. They want to believe people can't change, it makes them feel safer in their own bitterness. But change is real, Sophia. And you're the proof. If I hadn't met you, I'd still be the woman I was that day." The girl reached out, holding her hand. "Then I'm glad I said something." Victoria squeezed back. "So am I." By 15, Sophia began to dream beyond the shadow of the video. She wanted to study social work, maybe education. She wanted to fight for children who didn't have voices. "Because," she said to Maria one night, "I know what it feels like to need someone to speak for you." Maria hugged her, tears wetting her shoulder. "And I know what it feels like to be saved by your child's voice." Victoria, listening quietly in the kitchen, realized the video that once seemed like her greatest curse had become the seed of her redemption. Through Sophia, she had learned that dignity isn't restored by power, it is restored by love. Sophia Santos turned 18 beneath the soft glow of candles and the warmth of voices that filled their small apartment. The kitchen table, worn smooth from years of meals and homework, was crowded with dishes, arroz con pollo, plantains fried golden, and a cake that Maria had baked despite exhaustion from her nursing shift. Victoria sat beside them, her laughter blending with the family's as naturally as if she had been there since the beginning. "Make a wish, Mija," Maria whispered as the flame flickered in Sophia's eyes. Sophia closed them, pausing longer than usual. Her wishes were no longer childish, they carried the weight of someone who had grown up under the gaze of strangers, praised by some, mocked by others, but always asked to be strong. When she blew out the candles, she felt the quiet certainty of transition. She wasn't just Maria's little girl anymore. She was a woman stepping into her own future. That night, after the dishes were cleared, Maria handed her daughter a simple envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten with the neat, looping script Maria had perfected as a teenager in El Salvador. "My Sophia, you once taught me what courage looks like. Now it is my turn to remind you that courage does not mean never stumbling. It means rising again and again, no matter how heavy life feels. Wherever you go, remember that your voice is not just yours, it is a gift for others still waiting to be heard. Love, Mommy." Sophia folded the letter carefully, tears pricking her eyes. She tucked it into her journal, where she had written reflections ever since the day at Whole Foods. Pages filled with questions, doubts, and growing clarity about kindness, justice, and the fragile dignity that so often hangs by a thread. Sophia left for college that fall with a scholarship partly funded by Victoria's Foundation. She studied social work and education, drawn to both the structural fight for justice and the intimate work of teaching. College, however, wasn't the fairy tale she'd imagined. For the first time, she was away from Maria's steady presence. She faced professors who challenged her, classmates who resented her fame, and nights where the silence of the dorm pressed down like a weight. Some students whispered that she was only here because of that video. Others placed her on a pedestal she couldn't climb down from, expecting wisdom in every word. One afternoon, during her second semester, Sophia sat under an oak tree with her journal open and her chest heavy. She scribbled, "Do they only see me as the girl who yelled at a rich woman? What if that's all I'll ever be?" Her phone buzzed. A text from Victoria, "Dinner this weekend? I miss hearing about your classes." Sophia smiled faintly. Victoria had a way of showing up at the right moments, not with grandeur, but with steady presence. At dinner that Saturday, Victoria listened intently as Sophia poured out her frustrations. "I don't want my whole life to be about that one moment," Sophia confessed. Victoria reached across the table, her hand steady. "That moment didn't define you. It revealed you. The rest of your life is about what you choose to do with it. And you, Sophia, are already writing chapters far beyond that day." Maria nodded in agreement. "Your voice started the story. But your actions will finish it." Those words rooted deep. Sophia began to see herself not as a relic of a viral clip but as someone carving her own path. She joined organizations on campus focused on food insecurity, mentoring younger students while balancing her studies. Slowly, she built an identity that belonged to her, not to the internet's memory. While Sophia blossomed, Victoria grew too. She had sold one of her properties to fund a permanent food distribution program in Miami, one that bore no plaques with her name. Her joy came not from recognition but from walking through lines of families, handing out groceries with her own hands, and seeing dignity restored in the simplest exchanges. But redemption was a fragile thing. Not everyone forgave. Some critics never let her forget who she had been. Online, old comments resurfaced whenever her name appeared in connection with charity work. "She's just performing kindness," they sneered. One evening, after a particularly harsh article mocked her transformation as a rebrand, Victoria sat with Maria and Sophia at the apartment, exhaustion etched into her face. "Maybe they're right," she whispered. "Maybe I'll always just be the bully from that video." Sophia, now older, met her eyes with quiet firmness. "People will always say things, Mrs. Victoria. But I've seen who you are now. And I wouldn't invite a bully to my birthdays, or call her family. You're different because you chose to be. That's enough." Maria added softly, "Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It transforms it. You can't change who you were, but you can keep proving who you've become." Victoria wept then, not from shame, but from gratitude. For once, she felt seen not as the caricature painted online, but as the flawed, growing person she had fought to become. At 21, Sophia was invited to speak at an international youth conference in Geneva. The invitation stunned her. She had spent years working quietly, internships, community projects, tutoring children in underserved neighborhoods. Yet the world still remembered the girl who had silenced a grocery store, and they wanted to hear the woman she had become. On the stage, beneath bright lights and flags from dozens of nations, Sophia took a deep breath. Her voice was no longer the high, trembling sound of an 8-year-old, but calm, resonant, and steady. "When I was a child, I stood up in a grocery store because I saw my mother being humiliated," she began. "I wasn't brave because I wanted to be. I was brave because I couldn't stay silent. What I learned that day is something I want to tell you now. Courage isn't about size, age, or power. It's about love. When you love someone, or love justice, or love the truth, you find the strength to speak even when your voice shakes." She paused, scanning the faces of youth from every corner of the world. But courage must grow into action. It isn't enough to speak once. We must keep speaking, keep acting, keep choosing kindness when cruelty is easier. Because silence, my friends, is what bullies feed on. And kindness is what stops them. The hall erupted. Journalists wrote headlines calling her the voice of a generation of kindness. But when Maria hugged her afterward, she whispered simply, "I'm proud not of the applause, but of the heart you carried onto that stage." Years later, the three women often sat together on Maria's balcony, sipping coffee as the Miami sun dipped low. Sophia would chatter about her studies and her dreams of building schools where food security was part of the curriculum. Maria would smile, her heart swelling with both pride and disbelief at how far they had come. And Victoria would listen quietly, content to be part of a family she never expected to find. One evening, as cicadas hummed, Sophia turned to Victoria. "Do you ever think about that day? Whole Foods?" Victoria exhaled, staring into her cup. "Every day. It was the worst and best moment of my life. Worse because I saw myself clearly. Best because your courage saved me from staying that person forever." Maria reached across the table, taking both their hands. "Then maybe that day wasn't about humiliation. Maybe it was about transformation, for all of us." Sophia squeezed their hands back, her eyes reflecting both the child she had been and the woman she was becoming. "Then maybe the story isn't over. Maybe it never will be. Maybe kindness is something we just have to keep choosing, together. Time has a way of softening sharp edges, but it never erases them completely." For Maria, the memory of that Saturday in Whole Foods remained etched in her bones, not as shame anymore, but as a reminder of resilience. For Victoria, it lived as both wound and compass, guiding her away from the arrogance she once carried. And for Sophia, it was the seed of a destiny she never asked for but ultimately embraced. Years passed. Sophia graduated with honors in social work and education. Her speeches carried her across the world, to conferences, classrooms, even parliaments, always telling the same story in new ways, that dignity matters, that kindness transforms, that voices, no matter how small, can shift the world. Yet beneath all the applause, she remained grounded, still Maria's daughter, still the girl who baked cookies at night with flour instead of buying the $8 package. At 30, Sophia returned home to Miami, not as a girl defined by a viral video, but as a woman intent on building something lasting. She launched a foundation dedicated to empowering children who had faced humiliation, poverty, or silence. Its motto, painted across the entrance in bold letters, read, "Respect belongs to everyone." Maria, older now and her hair streaked with silver, served as the foundation's quiet heart. She rarely spoke at events, preferring to sit in the back, knitting or smiling at the children who came through the doors. But everyone knew she was the root of it all, the mother whose steady dignity had inspired a daughter to speak truth that shook the world. Victoria's role was more complicated. She had become the largest donor to Sophia's foundation, but she asked that her name never appear on a plaque. "My penance is not to be remembered," she told Maria once. "It's to keep giving without asking for recognition." But Maria shook her head. "No. Your penance is to live in the light you once tried to snuff out. You don't need to erase yourself. You need to be better every day." Victoria obeyed, though she never quite forgave herself. Her redemption was ongoing, a daily choice rather than a single act. She mentored children in the program, often sitting cross-legged on the floor with them, listening to their fears and dreams. And every time one of them asked why she cared so much, she would smile faintly and say, "Because once, I forgot what it meant to be kind. A little girl reminded me. Now I spend my life listening for voices like hers." When Maria grew ill in her late 60s, the foundation staff rallied around her. Sophia spent every spare moment at her side, torn between the demands of leadership and the deeper pull of love. Victoria, too, never left Maria's hospital room, holding her hand during long nights. One quiet evening, Maria looked at the two women who had defined her life in such different ways, her daughter, her protector turned leader, and Victoria, once an enemy, now a sister of sorts. "You too," she whispered with a tired smile, "are proof that life can be cruel and merciful all at once. I don't want you to spend the rest of your days remembering my struggles. Remember instead that we found joy even when life gave us little reason to." Sophia pressed her forehead to her mother's hand, tears soaking the blanket. "Mommy, everything I am, I owe to you." Maria shook her head faintly. "No, Mija. Everything you are, you always were. I just tried to protect the light until you could see it yourself." To Victoria, she said simply, "You gave me a gift I didn't expect, proof that people can change. Promise me you'll never stop." Victoria could only nod, her tears blurring the room. Maria passed quietly one spring morning, sunlight streaming through the blinds. At her funeral, hundreds gathered, neighbors, co-workers, volunteers, strangers whose lives had been touched by her grace. But the most powerful tribute came from Sophia, who stood before the crowd and said, "My mother never wanted fame, but she gave the world a gift greater than any speech I could make. She taught me, and all of us, that kindness is never wasted. Even when it feels small, even when it feels unseen, it plants seeds that grow into forests." In the years after Maria's death, Sophia carried her mother's lessons into every decision. She expanded the foundation nationally, then internationally, creating safe spaces for children whose dignity had been trampled by poverty, bullying, or injustice. She launched mentorship programs where older kids guided younger ones, reminding them they weren't alone. Everywhere she went, she told her story, not to glorify herself, but to remind others that courage often comes from the most unexpected places. "I was just a child in a checkout line," she would say. "But love gave me a voice." She never let people forget the two women who had shaped her most. My mother gave me strength. Victoria taught me that even those who hurt us can become healers. Between the two of them, I learned that forgiveness is not weakness, it's the strongest thing we can ever choose. Victoria aged quietly, her once polished beauty replaced by softer lines and humbler clothes. She no longer sought admiration, but she found it anyway, in the eyes of every child she helped, in the gratitude of every family she lifted. One evening, when Sophia was in her late 30s, she received a letter from Victoria, written in shaky script. My Sophia. If you are reading this, I am gone. I never stopped hearing your voice that day. What do you do besides be mean? I built a new life trying to answer that question. And though I stumbled often, I hope I proved that redemption is possible, even for the worst parts of us. Keep choosing kindness. Keep protecting the ones who can't speak for themselves. And never forget that you saved me as much as you saved your mother. Victoria had left the bulk of her fortune to the foundation, but more than money, she left her story. No longer just the bully from Whole Foods, she became the symbol of transformation, the proof that cruelty can be broken by truth, and arrogance can be reshaped into humility. At 50, Sophia stood in front of a new generation of children at the Foundation's headquarters. Behind her hung two framed photos, one of Maria, smiling in her scrubs, and one of Victoria, kneeling among boxes at the food bank, hair loose, eyes kind. Many years ago, Sophia told the children, I spoke up because my mom was being humiliated. I didn't know people would record it. I didn't know it would go viral. But I do know this, that one moment taught me the truth I've carried all my life, that dignity is worth defending, and kindness is worth choosing. She looked around the room, her gaze settling on a small girl clutching her mother's hand the way she once had. You don't have to be powerful to make a difference. You just have to be brave enough to say, this isn't right. And once you've said it, keep living it. That's how you change the world. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It was soft, reverent, the kind that carries more weight than noise. That Saturday afternoon in Whole Foods had begun as humiliation. It became a viral storm, then a path of redemption, and finally, a legacy that stretched across generations. Maria's quiet dignity. Victoria's hard-won redemption. Sophia's fearless voice. Together, they proved that cruelty may dominate a moment, but kindness shapes eternity. The little girl who once asked a wealthy woman, "What do you do besides be mean?" grew into a woman who answered the question with her life. She fought for dignity, for children, for truth. And she reminded the world that sometimes the smallest voices are the ones that echo the longest.